Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Excellence in Childcare podcast by One Place Childcare Software. I'm Cindy Alexander, and today we are interviewing Vernon Mason. He's haven't met or heard about Vernon Mason, you are in for a treat today. He is hilarious. He has tons of experience. He is called the trifecta of childcare. He actually grew up in an in-home program, and long story as his company grew, he's been the owner and director of small, medium, and large programs. He's got nearly 30 years of experience in the field, including a decade of multi-site ownership. He sold his schools to a large regional provider, and along the way, Vernon completed his master's degree in early childhood education. He wrote a couple of books, which I happen to have right here on my desk. And today, Vernon is the Senior Vice President of Growth and Development at the Nest Schools with another set of friend of mine. Oh, and he held up my book, Relationship Roadmap. Yeah, I put that one too. Woo. Got it all bookmarked when I go to try to reference my own book for stuff because I forget what I wrote sometimes. Anyway, Vernon, I'm so glad to have you here with us. I know I just told a little bit about your journey in a nutshell, but can you just tell us a little bit more about yourself and your journey into childcare?
Well, first thing I've got to say is I've got to get a
I
filter
take
on
my
here. I'm
glasses
telling you,
off
these
for
bags. Oh my!
podcast recordings because
That's
we all try to look a little
my.
better.
That's just bad. But anyway, yeah. So yeah, I need to airbrush that. But anyway, yeah, it's hard to believe, Cindy, that I've become now I'm the old person in the room. I can. 56 now, and when I tell people I've been in the most of my audiences I speak to are in their late 20s, early 30s, and I tell people that I've been working in this industry for 30 years now, which is
I know
longer than
on the
they've been
one hand,
alive.
our years of
It
experience, like,
brings
oh
a
my
whole new
gosh, we're
mindset to
so
you. Like,
old.
wow, these are truly babies. I mean, just as my somebody told me recently, they said, "You don't look your age," and I was like, "Is that a backhanded compliment?" I'm not sure if that's true or not, but anyway. But yeah, but I do have some value that I can bring, but I will say, and I have to say what's on my mind because if I don't, it leaves and then it may never come back, or it may come back at 2 a.m. in the morning. But I will have to say is, even though I have 30 years of experience, I believe for any of us to be successful in this field from this point moving forward, from a year ago moving forward, we've got to really pay attention to what the younger generations are saying, right? Our policies, our procedures, the way we manage our company has all been developed for people, my age, younger ones like you, Cindy, and then, but not for the youngest generations. And some of the things that we do, they just scratch their head and go, why are you doing that? And we look at these things and think, oh, they're a major benefit. And in reality, these people, they have absolutely no idea. So if you have a vesting program to get into their retirement, but you've got to be here 5 years, they're like, I'm not going to be here 5 years. I probably won't be here over 2 years. So we really do have to be open and pay attention to what the youngest generation is saying. And I say, who is your person? Who is the group of people that you interact with? Because if your leadership team has become people that you are close to your age or your mindset, because yes, there's some anomalies out there. There are some younger people who have a much mature mindset. I was like that as a young child. I think I was born as an adult, but anyway, but so who is the people in your team? Who are the people in your leadership team? Who are the people that you're asking for feedback from to figure out
Mm-hmm.
what the newest generation needs on a regular basis is vital. So I did sell my company right before COVID, which was just a blessing. And Jane and Jerry, who and are wonderful people, we were all in group coaching together years ago, and they sold just coincidentally a couple months after I did, and they called me and said, "Hey, we don't think we're done." And I think the first phone call I hung up on them, and then second phone call I took it. The third phone call they convinced me to join them and partner with them, and we are building the nest. We started in January of 2021 with no schools, and we are currently operating 36. And so, which is unheard of growth. Now, I'm not going to tell you it's perfect. It's not perfect. There's a quote I found, and I just, and gosh, I hope I get it right, but it talks about change and how it's messy in the middle, but beautiful at the end. So the challenge with that is this. Um, Jerry and Jane and I have very similar philosophies, very similar to yours, Cindy. That's why we all got along so well. And that is, we want things to run well, right? We want kids treated well, and staff treated well, and policies and procedures and checklists, and all everything going well. But when you're constantly adding new schools, you're constantly in this change, right? So there's always this messiness going on, and that's challenging for all of us to deal with, and it's become just our reality there.
So, wow, what did you say? 36 or 37 schools
36,
in
yeah.
2 years, basically?
20, yeah, all
Less,
of
less
21
than?
and just finishing all the 22. Yes, yes.
Holy moly. What is your secret sauce to be able to pull that off?
Um, we were able to scale our company, for a much larger. So we have the home office built
Hmm.
out to be able to handle 100 schools, if that makes sense.
Okay. Hmm.
Where when you and I were starting, and Jane and Jerry were starting years ago, it was scrimp along, scrimp along, scrimp along, scrimp along. You know what I mean? And we thought,
Hmm.
oh, we're going to have somebody in the home office that doesn't count in ratio. Oh, that's challenging. How are we going to do that? You know what I mean? And so, how they're all. And so, but now, Dan and Jerry have done. They significantly invested in the company to get us up off the ground. And part of that investment is, you guys, we've got to go ahead and scale this so that we are not doing that skip along, skip along, skip along, that everybody knows what they're doing, and we've got plans in place and procedures in place. And so that's
Okay.
that's that's why
It's
that's
amazing.
why
So
we've been
you
able
have
to do it.
had quite a lot of different roles in the industry over the years. How are you making an impact right now at
Yes.
the Nest schools?
Well, yeah. Well, at the nest, my job is at the nest, which I love. And when Jane and Jerry and I had the conversation about me coming on board, the probably the second thing out of my mouth was, I don't want to run the schools. I've done operations at that point, 28 and a half years. I've done, and that's like dog years. Working in childcare is like dog. 28 and a half years is like you work somewhere 50. Yeah. And I said, I'd love to come on board. There's so many things I love doing in the early childhood field, and one of the things is acquisitions, is finding the new location, and so that's what I do. And they have whole operations teams that are out operating the schools and things like that. So I don't have to worry about that. So I just go out and looking for new schools, new sites, and I do the demographic work, which is behind the scenes. Just figuring out, is that the right fit for us, and that I've learned so much through that process. I'll get a phone call or an email from an owner who is, really struggling. They'll say, I've never been able to get my school over 40%, and blah, blah, blah. And I'll pull the demographics for their area. And like, their school will be licensed for 200 kids. And in the 3 mile radius
Mm,
around their school, there'll be like 45 kids, 0 to 4. I'm
yeah.
like, oh, ooh. So you have to figure out somehow,
Right.
some way.
Hmm.
So, you can't sell to people who aren't there, right? And so I've learned a lot about that, about really figuring out, are the kids there? And are your demographics there, right? You know what I mean? And what are your demographics? Are you trying to sell a high-end program in a moderate or low-end,
Yeah.
low income area,
That is
or vice
one.
versa? So that's been.
issue kind of prevalent in the childcare field. So many people get into it just because they love children and they want to make a difference, and they don't have that business training to do a business plan and to study, the feasibility of, is the income
Mhm.
going to be there? Is the staff going to be there? Is the need in your community, before they find a location or before they decide to start a program. So um, that's where experience helps.
You're right, and it really, yeah, yeah, and it really is. I think at times, I think that's the piece. The banks and the SBA, things like that, they will do so make you jump through so many hoops, and I think that's what they're missing because so many people put the cart before the horse. They have selected a location and started all of that, and then you
Yeah.
find out, later there's not enough kids here, to fill this building up, or you would need every child in the area to enroll, So yeah, you're right. So that is something I definitely encourage people to make
hmm
sure that, and most realtors can pull the reports for you, some bankers can pull the reports for you, and let you
Yeah,
know
another resource
about
is like
the
your local
demographics in your area.
SCORE program or SBA program. They have access to all that stuff that you might have to pay for a report for. But if you go through, a nonprofit or possibly your lender or realtor, they have access to all that information. So amazing. So you also make an impact through speaking and training.
Yes.
What's going on with that in your world right now?
Well, I will say that's probably where I'm most passionate is I do professional development days. I go out for companies and state conferences and local conferences and I speak to childcare owners and directors and their teams and I love the connection I'm making. I think one reason I am able to connect is because I have been in the industry for so long, and I've done so many roles in the industry. I cooked for the first couple of years, right? I worked in the pre-K room from 4 to 6 in the afternoon at our first location, and I still say to this day, my favorite job to this day was working with those 4-year-olds from 4 to 6 in the afternoon because those kids they were hysterical. They would choose to come sit at the table with me while I was writing out bills or payroll or just writing out the schedule for them. And they would come sit at the table with me and they would just listen and we would just talk. We'd have the best conversations. And then, I mean, you think I'm crazy, but that's how I learned what the swinger lifestyle was sitting at that preschool, pre-K table. A little boy was telling these stories. And I was like, is he saying what I think? Is it that what he's, I said, oh my God. So you have to change the subject because you realize, oh my, mom and daddy's inviting people over to spend the night. And I was like, oh my. And that
Yeah,
brings up the whole, I know
they
what you
don't
did this
hold
weekend because
back.
he
I
has told
remember this one little
everybody
girl in my
in the room.
program. She was like, "Yeah, mommy is so mad at daddy." Like she's telling us, the issue, and apparently daddy had broke mommy's iPad, and there was a big hullabaloo about it at the house. So, but they don't hold back. They tell you everything. Oh gosh.
Hysterical. But so my time out in the field doing that is just really good, and I have some real stories that are in context that I'm able to share. One of my most popular ones that I've done in the last year and a half or 2 years has been it's called Controlled Chaos, and it's about classroom management because if there's something that's changed in this
Mm,
industry in my 30 years of being in it, and that is the behavior of children. That is, and if you ask staffing, what is one of some of your biggest struggles? What's your biggest struggle?
hmm
Many times it is controlling children's behavior, and so I'm able to tell stories, and I've had some life experiences about children with children, and so being able to tell those stories is very moving for me and very moving for them because I'm able to reset because we often forget why we're in this industry. There's so many things that go on. There's so much mechanism that go on behind the scenes that when you really boil it down to it, it really is about that interaction
Yeah.
between that teacher and that child in that classroom, and it's so easy to breeze over that, right? But we really just have to bring ourselves back to that and center ourselves back to and I just try to take my mind back to those days in that pre-K room, sitting there with those kids, excluding the stories about, about swinging, but just interacting with those kids and how that's what's important. When we try to do so much, we try to make everything so fancy and do all these other pieces, and in reality, it's
Yeah.
about the relationships that we build with those kids. Having a teacher in there that wants to be there, having kids in there that want to come every day, and having the teacher remain enthusiastic. That's the
Yeah,
secret right there.
relationships. Just,
That is the
just like
secret
you
to
said. And,
success
that's
right
the
there.
key to success with your staff and your staff culture
Yeah.
as well, as you have to put the time into the relationships. Do you need
Mm.
processes and procedures and checklists and compliance and, financial stuff and business advisors and
Mhm.
tax prep and all of that stuff? Do you need all that? Yeah. But really,
Yes.
the grease or the oil that
Yes.
makes it all work is the relationships, whether it is with building with children or building with staff or building with your professional support team. So I love that. I love that so much.
Yes.
You are, like we mentioned before, you're the author of two books. I've got here, Don't Go, a practical guide for tackling employee turnover, and then Get Out. But before you go, practical steps to turn your zero into a hero or set them free. So, can you tell me a little bit about your motivation to write these books?
Yeah, they came from workshops that I was doing. Don't Go came from a workshop I had been doing called Tackling Turnover. It's all about turnover, and you're exactly right. The book is all about relationship building. How do we interact with these people? How we motivate these people, right, to keep them there, and mindset behind it. And the other thing I would say, it's also a little bit about we have been fed over the decades that if people leave us, something is wrong, and in reality, that's a natural progression, and we have to realize that is something that comes along as long as you employ people, you're going to have turnover. It is what it is. Now, yes, you can have way too much turnover, and you can have bad turnover. Some turnover is good, Cindy. I know you have. I have. Somebody's given a notice, and I close the door with like, she's gone, she's gone, she's gone, she's gone. So there's good turnover also out there, but at this point, especially here we are in 2022, getting about to be 2023, we've got to accept that turnover is going to happen. We can do all we can to make as fun, a joyous, thriving atmosphere for them to live and work in. But we also are where our really, and that really gets into the Get Out book, where you wrote a great chapter in there about onboarding. But what we really have to focus on these days, parallel with the building relationships with our people, we have to focus on onboarding people, getting people in, getting them up to speed as quick as possible, having those checklists, having those things that need to be done, those processes that need to be done. And because the reality is we're going to have turnover. We're just going to have turnover, and so and we have to get out of the mindset of hiring heroes. We're looking for someone, and directors will look for someone with experience to fix whatever flaw they feel they have going on in their center right now, rather than growing people internally to fix whatever's going on in their center. And I can tell you, in my experience, it's rarely successful hiring someone externally to come in and fix something internally that out of control. Once in a while, sure, you get you're able to hire a star toddler teacher that comes in and keeps your kids from being piranhas and eating each other, right? But typically, no. Typically, you hire someone that can talk the talk, and you put them in that toddler room, and they leave at lunch, and you never hear from them again, right? Because they were eating, during the day. They left with bite marks all over them, whatever. So I feel as if we have to really get those kids up to speed, those new hires up to speed as quick as possible. Have some wonderful training programs, hands on, and sell it to them and deliver it to them in a multitude, and have someone that they're modeling with. Have it in written form, have it in a video form, because just like the kids that we're trying to educate every day, our staff learn in different different ways, right? You know what I mean? So you can't expect to sit a teacher in a school age room with
Mm-hmm.
a 3 ring binder that's 5 inches thick, right? With all your checklists and all that stuff, and say, "Here, read through that." In 30 minutes, they come back and go, "Here, thanks, I've done that." They haven't read it, number one, and
You're
even what they
right.
read, they're gonna remember about 10% of it, right? So really finding a way to really take it and becoming a system that you're proud of and that people
Yeah,
are
and
learning
you know,
from
we
is
both we
is
both
is,
wrote
is the
books
value.
very similar, with similar intent to be able to help, the culture, the hiring, the onboarding, the
Yeah, yeah.
retention, um, of your teams, because the
Hmm.
staff is really the most
Hmm.
important part of a childcare business. They're who interacts with the children, who interacts with the parents,
It is.
who ensures the quality, all of that. So that's a really, really important area for owners to focus on. And thank you, by the way, for allowing me to participate and contribute to your second book. I was very honored to be asked, and
Oh yeah.
um, yeah, appreciated, appreciated.
I was honored that
So,
you accepted.
you were just sharing, some stories that you really cherished, or, at least expressing that you have so many stories that you cherished about children. Now, we're talking about staff, and like you said, there have been some staff that we have both, when they turn in their notice, like we're doing the happy dance because now we don't have to figure out how to either improve the situation or let them go ourselves. They've like made the work easy for us. So, what are a couple of stories that you can remember of, like, you can't make this stuff up stories with staff in your schools?
Oh, oh my, let me think. Lord, there's so many different stories. The girl that called in
Hmm.
because she was sick, and it was one of those just repetitive, something all the time. And then my cook goes to Walmart to pick up some supplies, and she calls me and she says, "Hey, Mr. Vernon, that girl that called in sick, she's out here shopping at the Walmart, right?" So I go out to Walmart because I just, and I'm going to tell you, I try my best not to wear my B on my
Hmm.
lapel all the time, right? If B rhymes with which, begins with, right? And I will say that's one of the things I try to train people is, we sometimes directors get that bad rap of they'll put the B on and leave it on all the time, or using it to the wrong people. And I always give people permission. It's okay to be a B to the B, right? But don't be a B to everybody else. And so I headed out to Walmart because I had just had it. I just had it with her. I had it with situation. And I stood in the middle of Walmart and just fired this girl right in the middle of Walmart with her friends and all that stuff, because it was just one of those days. I was like, "You're shopping. You're shopping." Well, I didn't feel like working, but I felt like shopping. Oh, okay. Well, good. I'm glad. Well, I didn't feel like coming to Walmart, but I'm going to fire you in the middle of the
Yeah.
store. So, oh my, yeah. So, but probably my best story um, is my teacher who I had a couple teachers who had cars repossessed out of my parking lot because just couldn't pay their bills or whatever, or and so I had one that had a car repossessed out of the parking lot, and then probably a year later she took an extra week off at Christmas, and when she came back, she had gotten breast implants. And when I tell you that she didn't like go up a size, and I've worked with women for 30 years, so that I know way too much. I mean, I'm telling you, I know that if I put everybody
Hmm.
in a room together, they're going to start cycling together. I know I know way more than I should. And so she comes back, and I mean, let me tell you, when I say she jumped in, I mean, she went from like non-existent to like these. I mean, they were like, it was like when
And
she
you
comes
can't
in, it's
say
like,
anything.
uh, oh, 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 yeah. And so then the kids are like, "What's up with that?" And so then I had a group of parents come up to my office at the end of the day, the first day that she came back, and they said, "We're not mad or anything. We just want to know, what do we
Oh
tell the
gosh.
kids because they're asking what happened." And so we made up a story on the spot. I said, "Why don't we tell them she got an infection and it swelled up? We're hoping it goes down." So that's what we did. But the funny caveat to the story was I found out later because I would regularly take different people to lunch. And we'd have lunch bunches. I would just say, hey, I'm going to lunch, I'm going to the Mexican place, somebody wants to go. So I would always learn information from my staff when we would do things like that because it wasn't like I didn't go there with an agenda. I just went there just to interact with them and build relationships. And what I learned was she had financed them. And so then all I can get on my mind is she had a car repossessed out of the parking lot last year. So if they repossess her breast, will they take one or they take both or do you? I mean, you can't very well come in with a tow truck. You gotta.
No,
So
you
anyway, so
can't.
yeah,
Oh my
that's the kind of
goodness.
stuff you
And
just cannot
so
make up.
that just like adds to my list of funny stories that I've heard from you because I don't think I've heard that one. I don't think I've heard that one yet. Oh,
And I know you've heard the stripper story where the deacon of the church came in and said, "Hey, your 3-year-old teacher is a stripper at the monkey ranch or what? No, the horse pony ranch, whatever the name of the ranch was." Anyway, and I was like, "No, I didn't know that." And he said, "Please don't tell my wife that I told you." Oh, okay.
oh my gosh. Good times for sure. For sure.
Good times. Good times.
Um, so moving on. I mean, it's you have to find the humor in in the job because just so sometimes like it can be so chaotic, so stressful, so like out of the blue that you could cry or you could laugh, and if you can find the humor, you can get through almost anything.
Well, and sometimes it's the progression. Sometimes you're in shock, right? And then
That is
sometimes you
funny.
end the day in
Yeah,
tears, and then later,
yeah,
sometimes much later, you find the humor in it, right? You're right. And many times at a time you don't. But that's a great example of sometimes we react too quickly without giving it time to process. Sometimes people will bring you information, a situation may handle that we may feed in on the level of which it was delivered, of how important it is at the time, and later on we may think maybe that wasn't the best way to handle that. Maybe it wasn't as severe or important
gotcha.
as I thought it was.
So wow,
So,
this we are just moving along here
yep.
with our conversation. I'm gonna have to skip a couple of questions that I had on our sheet here that I wanted to ask you about. But how would you define a child care center of excellence? One of our goals. I mean, this is the Excellence in Childcare podcast. One of our goals at One Place is to help centers become true centers of excellence. What qualities or characteristics about the environment or the leader or the program indicate excellence?
Well, to develop a school as excellence, I have probably my strongest belief in running a good school and a good early childhood company, and I'm sure this could go into other industries, and that is the participatory management, right? That is before you make decisions, before you can you imagine not Mark Zuckerberg,
Elon
who was
Musk.
it, the guy Tesla
Hmm.
who just bought Twitter, right? Elon Musk. Can you imagine if Elon Musk had have taken a month, right, and taken a breath, right, and got teams together and said, "We've got to flip this company. We've got to turn it around," and gotten some ownership, right? You know what I mean? Now, yes, maybe it wouldn't have made everybody happy because we all know there probably would still have to be layoffs, right? But it would have shown that he was at least not deaf
Hmm.
to what was happening in his own company, right? And that's how sometimes we respond in a very small way in our early childhood company in our center. Is we figure we are in the office, we think we know all, we think we know more, we make decisions, sometimes we bring in our assistant director, sometimes we bring in our spouse or whatever to run scenarios by, we make these decisions and then we feed it down to the staff, right? Or to
Hmm.
the staff, we feed it down, this is the new policy, this is what we're going to do, right? And when in reality, we need to bring that information up from them. We need to have a group. We need to have a team of people that we trust, that we're nurturing to become the new leaders, the new rounds. Do we have the new people who are being fed up, right? And getting the information from them, we share with them, hey, we think that this may be a problem, or they even
Hmm.
bring you a problem. So what's the solution? right? And getting that information from those people. Because in my multi-site world, when I was running my schools, that began with the leadership team. We started with the leadership team, and then they would go back to their schools. They would collect data, collect information. We would come back, we'd sort through it, and then we would make sure that those schools saw the process that went in through changing or developing or implementing programs, how we got this piece from these people and we got this piece from those people, and they were like, oh, well, they did that thing I suggested that they did. One of the things that Jerry did at the Nest recently is he started just really putting out there a very simple program of innovation, and the email's innovation@thenestschool.com, right? Send us ideas, we'll implement, the great ideas that we see out there. And it's just a way of getting information and giving your employees a way of getting feeding information up to you so they can feel
that is
like they
so
are
important, because
being heard.
when they do feel like they were a part of the change, or they had a positive impact, or at least that their input was heard, even if you don't take their suggestion, they know that it was considered.
Yes,
It
yes.
really, really contributes to
Hmm.
buy-in and
Yes,
loyalty and retention. So,
yes, yes. And regardless of how large you get with multi-site, everybody,
mhm,
there's very few people out there that don't understand Zoom these days. You can have Zoom committees, right? Because people say, oh, we
yeah,
can't do that. Our schools are too far apart or whatever. Oh, yes, you can. Set up Zoom meetings, set up Zoom calls and stuff. So, yeah, it's possible out there to get the information. And I'm a firm believer, when you ask for input from the people that it will most affect, you will learn more and you will make a
for
better
sure,
decision than if you
for
try to
sure.
do it in a silo and do it yourself.
Um, all right. So, in the interest of helping to create more childcare centers of excellence, what do you think is the biggest hurdle facing childcare business owners and directors right now in the industry? And do you have any solutions that you might suggest to combat the issue or the problem?
Yeah, I would say there's three different hurdles that I would say. The classroom management, which I talked about, and that is classroom management. It is many owners, directors. It's like they've got this smoldering fire on their back porch, right? Because any day anything could happen. You move a child quicker than someone says. Did they actually pull too rough on that child, or were they moving too quickly and it looked like being pulled? Whatever. So many scenarios out there going on about classroom management. So dealing with that, having a plan, having an outline of how to handle scenarios, what progression you need to make, what kind of behaviors are allowable, what kind of behaviors, we can't just run our schools expecting our staff to tolerate anything and everything. Right, resources, giving them ideas, giving them way, giving them trainings. From anything from things you don't even think you need, like an unbiased curriculum, right? And a training on treating children fairly, right? You know what I mean? And so yeah, that's important.
Mhm.
Then the other thing I would say, we all know, is staffing. Staffing is the biggest crisis, and I kind of touched on that earlier. And my one tidbit on that, I would say, is be open to people who don't look like you, feel like you, or talk like you. May not even believe exactly what you believe. Be open to people outside, and because if we are constantly just looking for somebody to fit the mold of everybody else in your program, there's going to be less and less and less of those kinds of people. I can remember when I used to have the policies: no tattoos, no piercings, no this, no that, right? And I went and spent a half a day in a piercing parlor, learned a ton of information about that scenario, right? And started hiring people. And I spoke at a national company's award professional development day with with many of their directors there. And it was one of the times when my books had been released, and I remember all these lovely people standing up waiting for me to sign my books. And I remember looking up, going, hey, how are you? And there was a nose piercing. Hey, how are you? And there was piercings all down here. And how are you? Then there was one, that had to add sleeve tattoos, whatever. And I left there and I got on that plane. And I do my best thinking on planes sometimes after I go home somewhere like that. And I left there and I thought, isn't that interesting? Now that's a national company, and these people were the award people. I mean, I can remember them going on stage. Oh my gosh, she just got a sleeve and she just got an award for parent participation or whatever it was. And I just thought, if I ran this company, none of those people I would be hiring. What a waste that was. And I changed my mind and came right back, spent a day in a piercing parlor. And because we actually got the reputation
Mm.
in town, don't apply there if you have piercings, if you have tattoos, and blah blah blah. So we had to change the perception in the community. So we started actually featuring some of our newer hires on social media with the tattoos or the piercings or whatever. And there's lots of things I won't get into it today that you put into place what
Mm-hmm.
kind of piercings they have. You don't want dangly things to be snatched out or whatever. But yeah, so just be open to things that don't like that. The other thing I would say is kind of a biggie, and I believe that we are expecting too much from our directors. We are expecting our directors to do the food program and do the attendance reports and to process the tuition and talk to parents about being late. And we're expecting them to, nurture the kids and nurture the staff and do the onboarding and training the new staff and reprimand the old staff and review the curriculum and all the activity plans and the menus. Don't forget about the menus. And do we have enough milk? And did we get a new tire put on the bus? And it's way too much. It's not. It really isn't. I don't believe it's really possible to do all that. I foresee where we're going to go, where high quality programs are going to go, is that the director is going to become actually the leader. There are going to have to be people in place that handle the mundane details of what needs to be happened, and the director's job is going to be able to lead it, to
Mm-hmm.
oversee it, almost like a house mom, right? Where they're just assuring that everything has gotten done because and one of my beliefs is you can either spend the time doing the work or you can spend the time training people and following up that the work gets done. And that's why having programs and having processes in place and having checklists that just work and do it themselves is so vital in this world, so you're not constantly reinventing the wheel. So I think we're going to have to really check ourselves on
Yeah,
what we're
and I think
expecting
that is
from
really, really
our
insightful
directors.
that you brought that up because I mean I've learned so many times, as I've kind of risen and worked over teams that you need to spend your time as a leader on higher payoff activities. And when you're just like filling out a report so you can keep track of your weekly stats or organizing file folders to make sure everything is in there, like those are things that if you write a process for, almost anybody can handle it. And then you just verify. You don't just like say, leave it to the wolves, so to speak. You verify that it's done. You check up on it. Check 10% of your folders. If they're good, figure out that that they're good. But we are expecting our directors to do kind of admin work and leadership work, and there's not enough time to do both well. So,
Well, Cindy, that for someone to have the right soft
mm-hmm,
skills, they may not have all the
yep,
technical skills.
mm-hmm,
Sometimes once in a while you find that where they have it all, right? But sometimes you get those people who they can do that paperwork, they can
mm-hmm,
do those checklists, they can get it done, right? But they don't have the soft skills. You know what I mean? So I think we really
yeah,
need somebody with some
I
strong
100%
leadership
agree with you
skills
there,
and soft
100%.
skills to run our schools.
So to wrap up, can you tell us your personal motto, or maybe there's a quote that really inspires you, something that motivates you on a daily basis?
Well, it comes from my mother. And, she is the reason I entered this field,
Mm-hmm.
and because she kept children in her home growing up, and I use her a lot of her examples over the years. And the one thing I'll talk about is that I talk about in classroom management, and that is my mother started and ended so much of her direction of children with a hug, right? And there were times I saw
Mm-hmm.
her hug a
Yeah.
kid and never say a word to them. They got it. They understood. They went out and they tried better because there's
Yeah.
that
Mm-hmm.
phrase out there: you don't learn from somebody you don't like, right? And so my mom was the epitome of she wanted them to
Mm-hmm.
like her. Now that does not mean she was a pushover by no means, right?
Mm-hmm.
But there was that pressure because they did love my mom. And they wanted to please her, and they wanted, and actually, my mom passed away unexpectedly about 2 years ago. And we had children that she had cared for over the years who spoke at her funeral. And one of the girls, Cameron, she said, and probably the biggest compliment you can make, and she says that Miss Nancy challenged me not only to be a better human, but to be a better parent. And there's
Yeah.
no better compliment than that.
Yeah, your mom did a lot of right things. I can tell just by knowing you. I can tell. Honestly.
She did. Well, I have her sense of humor, and we both had problems with our filter, so I still have problems with my. I still get myself in trouble once in a while saying things I'm not supposed to. I haven't been canceled yet, and I'm trying not to get canceled. That's my goal. Don't get canceled.
Vernon, if anybody wanted to contact you
I have a
to
warped
have you
sense.
come train or speak at their schools or just learn more about what you do, how could they get in touch with you?
Yeah. Well, I've got actually two ways. So if you want to about have me come out and speak professional development, talk to me about that. Absolutely. That's Vernon Directors Leadership at gmail.com. Vernon VERNON Directors Leadership at gmail.com. If you by chance are thinking about selling your school, that's what I do in my day job with the Nest. Then you email me at Vernon at the Nest School, singular, Vernon at the Nest School.com. And I'll be happy to talk to you about that scenario. And
Okay.
even if we don't buy
Awesome.
it, I can
Well,
direct
Vernon,
you
thank
to
you so
people
much
who
for
could
joining
help you.
us on the Excellence in Childcare podcast with One Place. I really, really appreciate it. I have enjoyed so much about this conversation. It's really been great to catch up with an old friend. For our listeners, thank you for listening, and be sure to hit subscribe so that way you know when the next episode is coming out. All right. Thank you, everybody. Bye.
Bye bye.